one of the country's leading mental health experts thinks that medical cannabis could well have a role to play in the treatment of chronic anxiety in young people. Now, this is non-addictive, so I think it's important to make that point. But it's possible that this product might be available for sale without a prescription from as soon as next year. On the line, former Australian of the Year, Executive Director of the Youth Mental Health Organisation Origin, Professor Patrick McGorry. Patrick, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning.
So what are we talking about here? When we say medicinal cannabis, can you put some more flesh on the bones of that for us?
Yeah, cannabis, the cannabis plant is made up of two major compounds. One is THC, which is a recreational drug which sends you high and has a lot of risks attached to it in terms of psychosis and even making anxiety worse. But the other component, cannabidiol, can be purified and made into a medicine, which we did for this study, and it's effective in relieving anxiety. So National Mental Health Survey showed a couple of weeks ago that there's been a 50% increase in anxiety and depression in young people over the last 15 years, and we are absolutely overwhelmed with demand for care of these young people in Headspace and other youth mental health services. So we desperately need new treatments that are effective. Only 50% of young people respond to existing treatments like antidepressants and cognitive behaviour therapy. So half of the young people that we see, we're currently unable to help effectively. And so new treatments like this must be explored. Now, of course, the first point is to make sure it's safe.
Yep.
And that was one of the key things in this study. Safety was actually proven. It's a safe thing to be doing. It's not addictive, as you say. It doesn't cause any major adverse effects, and it relieves the anxiety in more than half of the sample quite significantly, and reductions of 42% of anxiety levels from within a group that were already really severely anxious. So this is very, very significant, but we need to do more research before it should be licensed or marketed more widely. And it shouldn't be bought over the counter or in the street. It has to be done in a medical sort of setting.
So, Professor, I mean, you've been covering this area, researching this area, looking after young people, treating young people for decades. How would you describe the significance of it is a small trial, but the results that you've seen here?
Well, they're very promising. We're trying to convince NHMRC so far unsuccessfully to fund a proper, a much larger and stronger trial, a randomised trial. So I think we desperately need novel therapies of various kinds. This is a promising lead, but we need major investment in medical research in youth mental health and mental health more generally, and we've been the poor cousin. On the positive note, the Wellcome Trust in the UK is going to be putting billions of pounds into mental health research in the coming years, so they've recognised the public health need. I don't think our country has fully recognised it because we've seen this 50% increase, and those findings from the National Mental Health Survey sank without trace a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we're still very preoccupied with COVID, which mental health in young people is right up there with COVID in terms of a threat to our public health.
The point to be made, I guess, also about this, that with this cannabidiol, which is otherwise known as CBD, as we've said, it's not addictive. It doesn't have the psychotropic side effects. Were there any side effects observed in this small trial?
Yeah, but they were minor. Sort of headache. Perhaps a bit of sedation in some people. Nothing serious. Which was a great relief to us. We didn't really expect there to be side effects because the side effects of cannabis, the negative effects, are all seen with the THC, the tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the reason why people use the drug recreationally. We also see in young people using cannabis to get the cannabidiol effect, because they already are needing self-medication and they're already anxious, and they use cannabis to help relieve that. So that's happening ad hoc. We want to actually stop that pathway and make it much more, regulated and safe.
In the United States and parts of Europe, I mean, you're starting to see these CBD products emerge almost as consumer products, not to mention that some states have legalised cannabis altogether. Is that the path that you think we should go down, or would you rather see it more controlled?
Much more. I want to see it in a health environment, not in a sort of unregulated environment. Legalising cannabis has got risks, associated with it because the THC is the thing that's legal in that setting, and so you're exposed to the risks of THC. But in relation to cannabidiol, where you can buy it over the counter or on the internet, it's in very low doses. And it is not going to be in the effective range that we found. In this study, we used 400 to 800 milligrams a day, which is much higher than what you see in those products that you can currently buy over the counter.
Patrick, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Yeah, thanks for your interest. Thank you.
Professor Patrick McGorry, former Australian of the Year and Executive Director of the Youth Mental Health Organisation Origin. So promising, he wants a bigger trial to prove it up. 133882 doesn't support widespread legalisation or sort of over-the-counter consumer CBD type products. Jane's in Armidale 2, Mason is in Bertram. G'day, Mason.
Hi, how are you there?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Well, talking about, cannabis and whatever, there is an Australian company that's called Medicinal that is about to get listed on the NASDAQ. And they produce a substance called Cannabis. It's just one that helps alleviate pain in cancer of the legs, etc. But there's a whole list that they produce. But it's an Australian company, and you would like to look at it.
Check it out.
It produces everything. They've even got all sorts of things, including the smallest particle possible.
So this nanotechnology. I mean, there's a whole host of companies that are in this area trying to make breakthroughs with a drug that's sort of been dismissed, I think, traditionally as just something for stoners. But the more that companies are looking at it and researching it, and as I said, in Europe and in the United States, you're starting to see the CBD products emerge as just, consumer products like a packet of crisps or a can of Coke or something over the counter. Patrick McGorry says he doesn't support that, but Mason, thank you for alerting us to MedLab, an Australian company doing their thing as well. Text here from Joseph that's pretty interesting. Joseph says, us young people with mental health issues need psychological services, not another drug. Currently, anyone who wants an appointment has to wait 12 months. Is that your experience in trying to access psychological services for your kids? Thank you very much, Joseph. I'd be keen to hear about that too. 133882. D-type products. Jane's in Armidale. G'day, Jane.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. You've had an experience with some of these medicinal cannabises?
Yes. Look, over the years, I've smoked the street marijuana for years to try and, self-medicate, but recently I was fortunate enough to be able to get a prescription and to be able to afford it for the CBD oil, THC oil. I'm treated for PTSD, and it's changed my whole life. Wow.
How so?
Yeah. Oh, God. Look, the THC is okay. Everyone likes that part, but the CBD particular, I think, is where you get most of your benefits from. So for me, I don't have flashbacks anymore. I don't have anger outbursts. I don't, I'm sleeping better. I can cope with my triggers better. It's just changed my life completely.
Yeah, well, I'm so pleased to hear it, Jane. I'm glad it worked for you.
Yeah, I hope they do some more studies and so forth, but I'm starting a little website. I'm not promoting myself, but I'd like to do a non-for-profit to try and sponsor people that need the oil that can't afford it.
Good on you, Jane. Thanks very much for your time this morning. Good on you. Appreciate you calling.
Yeah,